Hello! For those who don't know me, my name's Derek Bailey. I've been a wood turner now off and on for over 40 years and taught for 8 of them. And I've ventured into the area of eccentric turning by making, which you should hopefully have seen in my previous videos, an eccentric chuck, which is inspired by a joiner chuck which is just available in America. Carl Jacobson does a video on it. But it's very difficult to get one over here, so I decided to make one. It's not exactly identical, it's got my own incentives in it, but it seems to have worked okay. I put it onto the Axminster mini lathe, and the problem with that is that I can't put up the maximum revs that the revs will go to, the lathe will go to, for the simple reason that the mounting of my lathe is on a bench, and the bench is mounted to a wall in my garage, and there's shelves on that wall, and the vibration goes right through the wall and knocks a load of stuff off my shelf, so I can't put it at maximum because the lathe isn't secure enough on the bench. If you can get a really good solid mounting of the mini lathe onto a bench, then yes, you can put the revs up, but I've had to use it at minimum revs. And the problem with that is I have to move the tool very slow, and it's not as comfortable or reassuring as if I could put the revs up. When you're doing intermittent cutting, which you are doing with eccentric turning, it's essential that you get it up to the safest maximum revs that you can do. The chuck itself, the eccentric chuck I've made, will be ideal on my big lathe. In fact, I've tried it on my big lathe without any problems, and I can use the maximum eccentricities that the chuck can create. So I've made a goblet. It's ideal, if you're going to use the eccentric chuck, then it excels in doing pendants and small work that isn't projected out from the chuck very much. Anyway, you'll see that in the video. I managed to achieve a satisfactory result, and I hope you get a lot of inspiration and an involvement in creating your own eccentric turnings. Anyway, enough waffling, let's get on. Well, here I am testing my quick fix lathe steady. And here, as you can hear, and as you can see, it's not such a quick fix after all, and it's certainly not a steady. From an engineering perspective, it does look a little bit spidery and spindly and weak, but I was banking on the forces being radial and not axial, so I thought there won't be too much flexing upwards or downwards because it was. But the main thing that's let it down is my choice of bearings. I should have realised the bearings are only rated for very small movement as the timber comes out from a saw table and moves across. They're not designed to be running at about 1500 RPM, and they started to melt. Why didn't I think of it before? I made a lathe steady for my big lathe. Why don't I remove the steady arms and transfer them over to the mini lathe steady? And here it is, the conversion done at last. The bearings, normal bearings, are inserted into some wood wheels I made, and the tyres are from an old Lego set that must be about 30 year old, if not more, and it seems to work okay. Although that top tyre is looking a bit loose, I think the wheel is slightly less a diameter than it should be. I'll get some good old super glue to sort that out. I've just used the standard procedure of abrasives, which is 120 grit up to 320 grit, but I'm going to finish the inside of the goblet with walnut oil, which I got from Sainsbury's. It's a lot cheaper than the dedicated version that wood turners can get, and it's food safe, although you've got to be wary of nut allergies. It dries hard and it doesn't leave a high gloss, but it is quite a durable finish, and it's not talked about a lot. Off camera I've just made a slightly tapered bung to go into the end of the goblet, because when I'm using the eccentric jig I need to support this end of the goblet as I'm turning. Sometimes I've seen wood turners put tennis balls in, which is okay if you're doing it on centre, but if you're doing it off centre, a tennis ball doesn't work. So a flat surface for the tailstock revolving centre to go into seems to do the job. Over the previous months I've been doing my videos, I've got out of practicing using the screw chisel. I've always been slightly reluctant to use it simply because I have essential tremors, and it is important when you use a screw chisel that the actual placing of the chisel onto the wood isn't best help if you've got tremors dictating to where you want to place it. So I'm practicing my screw chisel techniques again. Mahogany is a lovely timber to practice on, and indeed finish items. I know it's very bland, but that's where embellishments come in. My rule of thumb generally is if it's very bland timber, then embellish it with various procedures, especially eccentric turning. It is a lovely timber to turn, and it's great to practice on. If you can get hold of any scraps from joiners and that sort of thing, snap their hands off. It's better than pine because pine has hard and soft growths, and tends to bounce a little bit when you're turning. It's not ideal for beginners. Back to my finishing with abrasives. I could have used Yorkshire grit on this, but I have some old sanding seal I want to get rid of. I might as well use it and then sort that out later. So I'm just using sanding sealer and 3 coats of melamine. Right, now let's do some eccentric turning. I'm unscrewing the end cap and indexing sleeve from the base, and I'm using the first offset hole. This lathe really isn't up to using anything past the second eccentric hole in the base. The vibration's far too great, so you'd need a bigger lathe if you want to take advantage of the more extreme settings. This is where the end bung comes in useful. I can position the tailstock right at revolving centre into the end of the bung and see if it keeps a permanent position. The number of times you can use this tailstock support method is quite limited. Obviously, if you use the extreme eccentricities in the base plate, the tailstock won't have any central location in the end bung. You'd probably have to make a larger end bung than the item you're actually turning and fix it somehow so that it'll act as a support. I'm starting off with a newly sharpened parting tool and going down to the maximum diameter that doesn't show any eccentricity undulations. Now I've set the correct depth. I've chosen a small spindle gouge. Now you need to be pretty sure of yourself in being able to position the bevel against the wood, because you haven't a lot of wood to rest the bevel against. So a lot of it is very sensitive feel. You do get a little bit of bounce, so then you've got to put a slightly firmer pressure onto the tool rest as your tool progresses through the wood. It's not a cutting action I'd recommend for beginners because of the bounce and the fact that you've got to turn a ghost image. You've got to be reasonably sure of your ability to place the bevel against the wood with very little feel. I'm turning now with no ideas in mind. It's my first attempt at eccentric turning in all seriousness, and so I haven't anything in mind that I want to achieve. I know what I don't want to achieve, and that's a load of eccentric discs that look like they're stuck together. I'd like to have some sort of organic shape to it, so I'm basically making it up as I go along and seeing how the tool operates as it goes through the wood. The spindle gouge is a bit difficult. It's leaving a reasonable finish, not a finish that I will be totally happy with, but it's not too bad. The parting tool seems to like eccentricity and goes through the wood quite easily. Before I carry on any further, I think I'm going to use the indexing system of my eccentric chuck and see what that produces. From what I've seen on other videos, you're just repositioning the common small diameter in a different position, so we'll see how it goes. The indexing sleeve has 12 positions on it, so I'm just taking up 2 of those positions and see what it comes out like.
I'm quite enjoying this. It's not stressful. It's making me keep my wits about me, but I'm quite enjoying the different shapes that are evolving as I move the bevel of the spindle gouger through the wood. I think there's a lot of scope in this to get different shapes, and the beauty of using an eccentric chuck is it's repeatable. There are other methods, a lot cheaper and easier to use, to produce eccentric turning, as you may have seen in other videos. You just make a spigot into the chuck and just pull your work away from the chuck and press the end downwards so that you tilt the work within the chuck itself. With this method, using an eccentric jig chuck with the indexing system, you can always go back to what you'd turned previously. I've decided to use the parting tool to form some of the shapes. It is a more comfortable tool to use. It doesn't seem to bounce in the same way and cuts through the wood far easier. I quite like using the parting tool for creating the curve. What I will do afterwards is I'll use the spindle gouge to smooth off. It doesn't leave a good finish, that's the trouble with a parting tool. So I'll use the spindle gouge to finish off the finish, but do the bulk of wood removal using the parting tool. I don't think I'm quite up to using the screw chisel on eccentric turning yet for doing some of the profiles. No doubt that will come with practice, but I'm erring on the side of caution, especially for this demonstration. This is where the Ryobi multi-tool comes into its own. It's far less painful than if I use my fingers to hold the abrasives against the wood. Two coats of sanding sealer and 3 coats of spray on melamine. The reason I'm using melamine spray on is because it's quicker and it gets into some of the funny shaped crevices which my fingers and tissue won't. I'm going back to my original setting on the indexing disc so that I can finish off the first eccentric position I made. I forgot to do the sanding on that, so I have to revert back. That's the beauty of this chuck. I can go back to one of my previous settings if I forgot to do any sanding. Right, now that's done, I can go back to the central hole in the chuck base and go to the normal position to do the final finishing. I forgot that I connected the goblet to the chuck with 4 screws.